Welcome to part 4 of the new imperialism. Now we're going to take a look at Italian unification. So all across Europe in the 19th century, you have this continual growing sense of national identity, right? You start to see Germans, Italians, Hungarians, Czechs, Slovaks, Romanians, and others began to embrace their uniqueness, their history, their language, their culture, and argue that they needed to live in nations of their own, right? For Germany, this meant unification. For Italy, it meant not only unification, but the removal of foreign occupiers, right? In the Balkans, this created increasing instability that was brought about too by a continuing weakening Ottoman Empire. Matter of fact, that's going to be kind of the linchpin here because the Ottoman Empire is in decline and Austria is in the center of all of this. And it has issues with both Germans and Italians, but also with the Baltic states to the east, right? So when the Austrians refused to support the Russians in the Crimean War against the Ottoman Empire from 1853 to 1856, it made the Russians pretty unsympathetic when the Austrians started having trouble with their Slavic people in the Balkan territories as well. Matter of fact, just the opposite. The Russians began to publicly support the claims of ethnic Serbs and Hungarians and Romanians, right? Their hope was this, that by doing that, supporting independent movements, that maybe they could move in and become the next big power, imperial power in the Balkans. Now, the Austrians' response to this is going to be tighter repressions in the Balkan regions and an obsession with their eastern border. The obsession with the eastern border, though, created the opportunity for Germans and Italians to address the question of unification in their regions because the Austrians had shifted their focus away from there. Now, after that revolutionary year of 1848, it was pretty clear in Italy that Piedmont Sardinia, specifically under the Savoy dynasty, was the key to Italian unification, right? Piedmont Sardinia had stood up to the Austrians, albeit unsuccessfully, and had retained a liberal constitution back there in 1848. So in 1852, King Victor Emmanuel II named a new first minister, Count Camillo de Cavour. Cavour was a very competent, extremely competent minister, and he began strengthening Piedmont Sardinia against its Austrian rival. Right? He fostered the creation of a new, modern, and industrialized and financial state. He began expanding and modernizing the armed forces, and he began securing allies, specifically France. He signed a treaty with France to give them support in the case of a war with Austria. So in 1859, Austrian government demanded that Piedmont Sardinia stop its military buildup, and when the Italians refused, Austria invaded Piedmont Sardinia. But remember, they got this alliance with France. Napoleon III is going to send troops in. The French troops will defeat the Austrian armies at Magenta and at Solferino, right? At this point, the nationalists all over Italy began to rise up against the conservative rulers, right? Now you have another big unification movement, right? For example, in the South, a revolt led by Giuseppe Garibaldi and his Carbonari, remember we already talked about them once, was especially successful. And so you started to have the old leadership down there being overthrown by him. As a matter of fact, Garibaldi was so successful that Cavour had become worried that he would create an independent southern Italian state. So he's going to actually order the Piedmontese army to march further south, expecting a conflict, right? But when the two armies met, Garibaldi knelt and submitted to Victor Emmanuel II, recognizing him as the king of a united Italy, right? So Victor Emmanuel II will be officially proclaimed King of Italy in March of 1861. Venetia in the north still remained officially Austrian until the Ausgleich there in 1866. And the Pope himself really disliked this arrangement, and Rome remained under papal control until 1870. Now, liberals were disappointed by this final arrangement. They wanted a republic, But remember when I was talking about the lessons of the revolutions of 1848, one of them was that it was going to have to be a top-down movement, and so therefore this expectation of liberal democracy or a liberal republic is not very realistic, that you're going to have some kind of monarchy in that place, at least initially.